We took the panel truck out in the street and drove it and followed it to make sure that it wasn't dog tracking, and it wasn't. So apparently someone, whoever put the body on the late model Chevy truck frame, got something crooked, because the fender was nearly touching the tire there at the back of the tire. So this is the fender that was severely damaged down at the bottom. So I just cut the bottom of the fender off and beat it on the floor with the hammer and used the concrete as a dolly and got it straightened out. And now I've cut a section out of the back of that piece and moved the whole fender opening back about 2 inches roughly. You can see that little slice of the wheel opening up towards the top of the tire is following the trajectory that was, getting it close to the tire, which I will push that up and weld it into place also to where it's further away from the tire. But this is a case where it doesn't matter what's wrong with the car, you can do something to fix it. And I don't know, like I say, what they did wrong that would make this fender be so close to the tire. The truck tracked straight down the street, so I told Chad, well, this fender's mangled up anyway, we can just make a new wheel opening that fits the tire well and not worry about it. And that's what I'm doing here. Now here I can't reach up in there to the corner of the cut off piece and pull it out even with the rest of the fender. So I'm going to take a regular nail like you use on your house and weld it to the lower piece of metal so that I can pull it out and pull it out even with the upper piece and weld it. The first thing I have to do is to weld the nail into the sheet metal, and I gotta get good enough bead on it to where it doesn't blow part of the nail away and break too easy, and also gets a good weld where I can pull on it. And there you go, I got the nail too thin and it just broke. Now this next time when I weld it on there, I'll push it into the puddle to where there's enough thickness. Gotta clean my lens there so I can see better. Now see if I can weld it on to stay this time. Now I'm pulling out on the welded nail to hold the panel flush while I weld it. I'm welding the majority of this panel as an overlap just to make it easier, since we're going to be taking the fender back off anyway, and I'll do rust proofing and stuff on the inside to make sure that it lasts a good long time, although I'm sure he's never going to drive it on the rainy days or anything like that, so won't be really any worry about too much rust. Now I'm welding another nail to it so I can pull this part inward to touch the upper piece. I'll use the pliers to pry against the upper piece and close the gap, and put a weld on it there to hold it. Make sure it's good and welded before you let go of your pressure. Now I'll weld one final nail on there to pull the gap together from the bottom panel to the upper panel. You can see the gap close, and I will weld it. Now I can carry on with the welding now that everything's lined up properly. I'll speed this up now because it's going to be weld, 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 stitch, stitch, stitch. I bet there'll be some goofballs out there quacking about that gap that you see there down at the lower part of the fender, like that's something. But if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. Nothing to it the way we do it. That gap ain't nothing. While I am going back and forth to keep it from getting too hot in any one area. I'm not going as slow as I would go if I was welding really thin sheet metal. These fenders are like 18 gauge, so it would take a lot to get them real hot to where they warp up. But that's not to say they won't warp up. It's just they won't warp as easy as like a late model car that has a 22 gauge or 24 gauge. Those you need to space your stitches out and let them cool off before you get it too hot. This fender was pretty messed up down there at the bottom. The whole bottom section of the fender was banged up pretty bad. So a little bit of warpage isn't going to hurt my feelings too much. Now I'll get to welding that gap up and show that there's no big deal with a gap like that. Takes a little time to weld it together, but not excessive amount of time. Not enough time to worry about trying to cut a little piece of metal and put in there. That's just plain dumb. I know all the resto clowns want to pretend like they're Chip Foos or Gene Winfield or whatever, but I'm making these videos for DIY guys, and we ain't never gonna be Gene Winfield. But that don't mean we can't get our project done and have a final product that looks just as nice. I didn't make a video of it, but when I get done welding and start doing some fiberglass filling, the gas door is too low and my fiberglass filler was like going into like a valley. So I cut that gas door back out and bent the square edges around it outward and welded it back on, because that's what I had to do to make it right. Just because something doesn't turn out right doesn't mean that you can't fix it. Was it a pain in the butt? Of course it was, but that's working on cars. You run into a rock in a hard spot, you dig your way out of it. I ain't never had no car beat me. When I want the job done, I do whatever it takes to get it done. And I don't give a rat's rectum what anybody says about hack or butcher or anything like that. My welds are solid, and my work finished out is going to last a good long time. I've been doing work exactly like this for 40 years, and I want you guys watching this to know that even if you attempt something like this and mess it up, that doesn't mean that you can't go right back and fix it. It can always be fixed. If he were to later move the body around or whatever it is that have that fender too close to the tire, well, I can cut the bottom of this fender back off and add 2 more inches back into it, put it right back where it was. I ain't scared. I can do whatever it takes to get the job done. Now I'm going to push this section that I cut up there and weld it so I can have the arc of the wheel opening even with the new position of the lower part of the fender. Because of moving the lower section back and pushing this section up to meet that arc, there's going to be a missing section between the two pieces of about 3 inches that I'll cut out of an old fender that we've got and weld it in the space in between these two parts. I also want to tell you that warpage is not near as much of an issue when you're welding next to something that's a hard crease. It's difficult for that to warp because there's a bent metal section right there at the bottom of or at the beginning of the wheel opening. So it's much stronger there and much less likely to warp. So I'm just welded up quick, fast, and in a hurry. The piece there kind of twists outward when I pushed it up, so I'm having to beat it in as I weld it to get it flush. I'm hammering the high spot from the outside, and then I'm going to use my hammer as a pry bar to pull the inner piece outward to weld together. This entire process of cutting and fitting and welding and getting it ground back down ready for Bondo took about 4 hours. So I spent 4 hours to render a salvage yard reject fender, perfectly usable fender. Just because some part of your car is really messed up doesn't mean that you can't fix it. There are literally hundreds of thousands of project cars in waiting out there for the owners to find a YouTube channel or whatnot to help them start their project and get it done. And that's what I'm all about right here, to show you guys how to do that. Because I'd love to see all hundreds of thousands of those cars get done. And I can sure help you do it. When I start putting out my Academy of Automotive Arts content, then I will not speed it up, and I will do it as a school class lesson on how to do every little thing that we're doing here. This, once again, is a demonstration, not a lesson. Now here's the finished product, ready to put some fiberall light on. You see, I got it ground hard so it'll stick good. So please touch my like thingy and subscribe, damn it!